We're really thrilled to welcome you to the first episode in Lantern's AI Momentum series. Really, we're starting this conversation because we realized 2.5 years in from the launch of ChatGPT, how crazy is that, right? That sort of put AI back into the public consciousness of a lot of people. Now, a lot of you have been leveraging AI and different flavors of that for value for a long time. But what we really are figuring out is that as organizations have tried to absorb this wave of change over the last couple of years, all of a sudden, just like me trying to stretch my mileage last weekend on my run, I'm realizing where my preparation maybe isn't exactly where it needs to be, or things and opportunities that I have to work on. And really, we're finding a lot of organizations at this point where they're trying to think about how they scale beyond and really realize some value at scale out of their AI investments. So by means of introduction here real quickly, my name is Jeremy Bierlein. I'm a principal technology strategist for Lantern, which means I work with Lantern's clients. Been in the industry for 25 years, working with customers from startups to Fortune 5 across a wide variety of industries to try and map technology opportunities to what they're trying to accomplish from their business. I'm joined today for this episode by Suzanne Williams. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Good, everyone. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I lead Lantern's strategy practice and am excited to be joining Jeremy as we share with you some of the things that we've learned, some of the things that we know, and some of the things that we have had the good fortune of supporting our clients in as they seek to understand and navigate this world of AI.
Thank you, Suzanne. And if you're new to Lantern's an AI-first consultancy with 20 plus years delivering results for our clients, many of you who are on the phone, so thank you very much for your partnership. And we do that through the power of the Microsoft ecosystem and a unique partnering and delivering model and the ability to bring a broad set of capabilities to bear, AI, data, and beyond. So with that, let's dig into our first episode in the series. We won't answer all of the questions around AI adoption and value realization, but really our intent is to start peeling the onion. So we're going to start with, I think it helps to be able to look around and say, are other organizations in the same place that we are? Are they facing the same challenges? Spoiler alert, yes. We'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing, what the industry is seeing. Then we'll dig into this idea of AI fluency, specifically AI fluency from your leaders and how that can both help and in some cases maybe hinder the momentum of AI in your organization. Likewise, we'll talk about what AI readiness, particularly AI readiness for scale, looks like, and the dimensions and the capabilities you need to think about as leaders in order to unlock that AI value. And all the way along, we'll offer some insights and experiences from organizations that we've worked with and give you some concrete ways to go ahead and take action on the topics that we talk about today. With that, we're going to dig in. Let's start with that baseline. So one of the things that we do is we leverage Microsoft's stages of AI value realization. You can see left to right, 1 through 5. There's the exploring, the planning, the implementing, and then really scaling and realizing. I think a couple of things. Number one, organizations aren't necessarily just in one place. For example, we work with an organization that has years of experience embedding AI in their physical products to create a competitive market differentiation. So in that particular area, their use of machine learning in those products, they're all the way over to 5. But I think if that organization would look at themselves in terms of other ways and other places they want to adopt AI to add value in the organization, they might put themselves somewhere in that neck of the woods of a 3. And I think what we're seeing, what analysts like Forrester and Gartner are seeing, is that about 75% of organizations are still somewhere in that 2, 3, maybe 4. And so there's some material barriers to when organizations get to this point where they start lighting up AI in their organization. It raises up interesting questions across value, across technology, across capabilities, a whole bunch of different things. So the short answer is if you feel as an organization you're somewhere in that 2, 3 neck of the woods, you're not alone, is what we're seeing and in what analysts are seeing. So what we're also seeing is that the business case for AI is being made, but there's material barriers to actually realizing that value and making those business cases come true. This is a yes and slide, right? 65% of organizations are using and deriving business value from generative AI in 2024, but we have a large swath of organizations facing value realization issues. What's interesting and what we'll dig into a little bit today is a little bit of the people side of that. 70% of AI adoption challenges are people and process issues. Just 20% are technology challenges, and only 10% are really, well, what AI algorithm should I use? Should I use 4.0 or 4.0 mini? And so I think what this illustrates to us, and we work with in our clients, is that the people and the process pieces are just as important, if not more important, in order to be able to get unstuck and to fully realize the value of the investments you're making in AI. So what barriers are we seeing? We're generally seeing customers at this point who are in that 75% stuck in one of two places. First of all, endless experimentation. Maybe this is your organization. You've delivered a great proof of concept, or maybe you've delivered several great proof of concepts in different ways. Maybe you're experimenting with M365 Copilot. You get that POC done, and then it just sits there, or it doesn't get the organizational attention to move forward, or whatever the case may be, you stall at that point a little bit. I think we see a couple of root causes under this sort of barrier point. One is just a lack of shared understanding of the value that AI can bring. But some organizations, it's still viewed as if there's something interesting over there, it's a little bit of a nice to have. Sometimes the value case isn't necessarily quantified or measured. In other words, hey, this seems like something cool, let's try it. Establishing the value around it before you proceed and making sure to measure it really is critical in order to carrying it beyond that proof of concept. The use case isn't compelling enough, and it's okay to experiment. There'll be things that your organization tries with AI that'll be like, that was great. Here's what we learned, and now we're going to go do something else. That's okay too. Experimentation is good too. But hand in hand with this value calculation, this is really important to say, if we're going to invest in POCs, really understanding what might come out of them. POCs are too technically focused. Now, this may be an important building block to doing something pretty novel in your organization, but just knowing that if a POC is really about the AI technology for the AI technology's sake, it may have trouble catching attention and fire and momentum within the organization. And then last, insufficient change management. We particularly see this with purchase copilots like Microsoft 365 Copilot. We see organizations that will install and pray. If we give people in our organizations this tool, they're going to use it and good things happen. And the reality is that it just doesn't happen. Going back to that 70% stat of being people and process challenges, it just doesn't at the end of the day. The other big thing that we're seeing, and this is like me prepping to run long distance, right? This is stalling right before the finish line. I can think of a couple of organizations we work with who have made the investment, who said, okay, we're going to take this beyond proof of concept into a pilot. This is something we're going to send live and make it real. And then right towards the finish line, all sorts of things begin to come out of the woodwork in the organization. One common conversation that happens, I had a customer, we were talking about a pretty routine use case, generative AI for customer service, contact center agents, that sort of thing. And there was a debate about accuracy. For example, do we need to be 96% accurate, 94% accurate? And then one of the things we did was we said, how accurate are your people? Right. And they're like, oh, actually, these numbers are generally better than our humans, especially when we scale up at busy times. Okay, great. Sliding definitions of done, right? This will be when maybe a business stakeholder comes out of the woodwork and said, oh, you know what? Hold on. Let's wait to go live with this because maybe if we can just add this additional information so it can answer these sorts of questions. Let's hold up on that. Data quality or sufficiency. I had literally a pilot stop with an organization because they discovered that literally their gold standard SOPs that they were basing this on actually had incorrect and dated information. These were the documents that their customer service reps and their technical troubleshooters were using with customers already, and were supposedly the golden curated standard, but AI surfaced issues with those more visibly and quickly, so they had to go back and do remediation. AI cost uncertainties, whether you're paying for AI by the person, paying for it by the query, or paying for it in cloud consumption. This can be a difficult one to forecast. And this is another place where sometimes at the last minute, they'll be like, hey, wait, how much should we be budgeting for this capability next year as part of the value case? Questions about monitoring and trust. Every time a new news story pops up in terms of, let's just say, an AI chatbot giving an incorrect answer as part of a customer service interaction, this one tends to pop back up in the organization. Maybe it's from legal, maybe it's from your customer care organization. And then lastly, are people ready? This one really surfaces in the sense of, are people who are going to use the tool trained, equipped to be able to leverage it effectively? Have they given it a good test run? And then if this is something that's going out and facing your customer, are your people ready and there to be able to support? Two kind of common areas that we see organizations getting hung up on this a little bit. I'm going to ask Joe to pop up the poll right now. And so I think one of the things that we'd like to hear from you is your organization getting caught by, maybe it's one of these, maybe it's both of these, maybe something else. Maybe you are clear sailing and you are rocking and rolling, delivering value. So take a moment, if you would, on the poll and go ahead and submit your answers. So far, both is off to a solid start. Endless experimentation is catching up. Yeah, I think especially because we see organizations like Microsoft and others investing in POCs, this could be another place where maybe a POC gets done, but then there's, okay, how is it aligned to the larger organizational strategy? How are we going to fund it? There's a lot of those sorts of broader planning questions. All right, it looks like we're slowing down a little bit. So if I were to rate us, endless experimentation comes in first. Challenges before the finish line is a little bit further behind. Both is second place. So that is helpful. Something else, I'd love to get your something else in the chat here if you want to go ahead and drop it. But I think what you're showing and sharing here is actually really pretty similar to what we're seeing across our customers and what, again, people like Gartner and Forrester would say are out there in the industry. Again, the purpose of this is to give a little bit of a level set. And I think what we're going to do now is start to peel the onion a little bit. So this endless experimentation, one of the big challenges is, are leaders bought in? Do they understand the value of AI? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne to go after this topic of AI fluency. Suzanne.
All right. Thank you. As Jeremy mentioned, there are any number of barriers that we see to AI fluency. We picked the two for the purpose of this conversation today that he just shared with you that seem to be most pertinent and top of mind for our folks. But when we think about the first and frankly, the most foundational barrier to AI adoption, it is a lack of fluency. And if you ask Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever your assistant of choice is about what AI fluency means, you're going to get some variation of what's on the screen. It's the ability to confidently understand, question, lead strategically around, and create business value through AI. What I love about the Copilots of the world is they are thorough. What I am challenged by is that they're very wordy. When I think about what AI fluency means at the most simplistic level, it is about knowing what AI is, what it's not, what it means, and what to do with it, or as the case might be, what not to do with it. So here's a question for you all to consider, and I would love just to have you drop your thoughts in the chat. What percentage of U.S. executives, and we're going to pick on the U.S. right now for lots of reasons, what percentage of U.S. executives have a substantial conceptual knowledge of AI. In other words, how many of our leaders are actually AI fluent? And what thoughts, okay, stepping in 10%, something less than 15%? I'd love to get a few more thoughts here of everybody leading our organizations today, according to MIT. What percent? Oh, we've got 2%. We've got some low expectations here. Nothing has gone above the mid-teens. Oh, we just snuck up into the high teens there. All right. This is a pretty astute group, and either you're lucky guessers or you've done your reading. In the US, only 8% of executives are AI fluent. Now, I'm confident that our colleagues with us today from places like Toronto and other parts of Canada might say that executives north of the border are far more fluent than we might be in the US, but let's just go with this for a second. If you flip 8% on its head, what that tells us is that more than 90% of leaders of organizations today don't understand what AI is, what it means to their business, and what to do as a result. And when we were talking, just as we were waiting for folks to gather together today, and we were talking about issues of trust or fear, that is certainly pervasive within our employee bases today. And it, as it turns out, is equally pervasive amongst our leaders. So what do we do with this information? I'm going to invite you to think about something here. Let's take a minute and just think about fluency within the leaders of the organization that each of us work with. And ask yourself these questions. How well do the leaders in my organization understand the similarities and differences between narrow, generative, or general, and super AI? It's a pretty basic AI question. How conversant are they in the core technologies like machine learning, natural language processing, and deep learning? Click it a step further. How fluent are they in the benefits, limitations, and risks of AI to the business? And if we want to peel back the onion one more layer, as Jeremy said a minute ago, what are the reasons for my organization's resistance to AI? Our leaders' resistance, maybe even a little bit of resistance ourselves. As I mentioned, as we were starting things off today, each of us was new to AI at some point. What was that really kept us from embracing it wholeheartedly? And might that be present in those leading our organizations today? So understanding what AI is and isn't and what it means and what to do with it is becoming increasingly important because, as Jeremy mentioned, AI is pervasive and will only continue to become more. Remember that 8% of our executives are fluent and 90% are not. Here's why it matters and what the implications of fluency or lack thereof are. All right. So the presence or absence of AI fluency has real consequences to the business. And we're just going to click through a few of these, and I'm going to sprinkle in some client examples along the way. If we stay just at the strategic level for a minute, leaders who don't understand AI either don't have an AI strategy or they have an AI strategy that is likely directionally incorrect. That is a problem for any number of reasons. We have a client that Lantern is working with currently who's been an executive for a previous client, and he has recently moved to a new organization. And he has a senior position in the information technology division of that organization. And amongst other things, has been asked to do a refresh of the technology strategy that he inherited from his predecessor. What's not present in that technology strategy, granted it was developed a few years ago, was any mention of AI, let alone what the opportunities and the implications might be. To his credit, our clients reached out and said, hey, you know what? I think I know a decent amount of AI, but having to refresh this enterprise technology strategy is causing me to question my own knowledge and think about things a little bit differently. And so we're in the process of working with him and his direct leadership team to help increase their AI fluency and to really start diving deeply into some questions about what AI does and does not mean to the organization. And I'll give you a few examples of that as we go through here. If we go down to the next example and we talk about leadership, in AI, you have leaders who are advocates or you have leaders that are adversaries. Typically, most leaders that are uncomfortable with AI will be adversarial in some way. Directly, often not. Indirectly, likely. And that is as true for executives as it is for our employees. As Jeremy mentioned, a lot of the barrier to AI adoption or to AI success and scale lies in organizational adoption. And human behavior is such that we only get behind the things that we actually understand, which is why this concept of AI fluency is so important. Leaders either support AI or oppose it directly or indirectly based on whether or not they understand it and they trust it. And that makes them just like the rest of us. Understanding and trust go hand in hand, and that is a particularly pertinent and poignant point in the world of AI. If your leadership isn't advocating for AI, efforts to apply it and embrace it will fail. Second client story to share with you. We recently began, and I'll underline began, a piece of work for a very large client in the high-tech sector. They recognize that AI is changing the game. They want to be not only in the game, but on the front lines of the game. And to their credit, they budgeted several $1,000,000 to start thinking through the implications of AI to the organization. They kicked off the project team. They spun up a significant team to support that effort. And about 4 months and close to, let's just call it 7 figures in, leaders began coming out of the woodwork, some in technology and some in key business functions, and saying, hey, like, I'm not behind this. I don't support this, and here's why. Or had some other reason for not being in favor of dedicating time from their team members or their own time. And it turns out that when we peeled back the onion, the work needed to make sure that you know who your stakeholders are and to assess their AI fluency and to understand how that AI fluency or lack thereof will impact how they show up and participate or don't. That project went on a pause as the client recognized that they had some work to do to get their own folks lined up and to start back at this fundamental place of driving AI fluency. Just to click through a few of these again a little bit more rapidly, when it comes to competition, AI, you're either going to be vulnerable or you're going to be vulnerable. That is a mouthful, and I was afraid I wasn't going to get it right, but I think it did an okay job there. The question to ask around AI related to the competitive landscape, who you're competing against, who you're worried about and who you're not worried about. The question there is, how can we turn AI into a core competitive advantage that others cannot equally replicate? And how do we use AI to ensure that we are not consumed in a very competitive landscape? When we talk about decision-making, you're either making effective or ineffective decisions based on your understanding of the technology. Questions that you ask at that point are, what are the implications of AI to our business, to our industry, to our workforce, and again, to our competitive landscape? And then as we think about things, the list goes on and on here. I suspect that some of you may have seen these implications of AI fluency pop up in your worlds. Leadership fluency isn't just about understanding the technology. It's about acknowledging that leaders who fail to grasp the broader implications of AI are risking costly failures and projects. I'll just pick on Zillow since that was a pretty public AI, I'll call it a hiccup. $300 million in lost AI project just due to mismanaged or lost budget revenue, just due to mismanaged AI deployments. I think the case has been made here for what that fluency or lack thereof might mean. So let's talk about what you might be able to do about that. To increase AI fluency amongst an organization's leaders, we recommend scheduling a half-day accelerator, investing a little bit of time amongst key leaders in your organization to understand where they are today in terms of their understanding of AI, and then to deepen and expand that understanding, which ultimately is the thing that will not only allow for better decision-making and better strategic prioritization of key initiatives, but also gets a conversation flowing within the organization that might not have come online before now, absent this emerging and increasingly pervasive and important technology. All right, I'm going to take a breath here, shift gears just a tad. I love seeing the comments coming into the window. Please keep those coming. Any questions that you might have, you're welcome to hold on to those or to put them in the window. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end, and we will do our best to get to as many of those as we can. All right, I'm going to hold on tackling the second barrier directly for just a second and set a little bit of context here. And all good consultancies love a good framework. And here is Lantern's AI activation framework, which ultimately is a structured approach that we apply when working with our clients that give them the confidence that they need in the plan for AI and in solving some important things like moving beyond proof of concept purgatory into actually impactful implementation of AI. Just a little bit of the model as we click through it. On the horizontal axis, we think about AI-driven strategy and experience, which essentially focuses on ensuring that comprehensive and cohesive approach is in place in the terms of a vision, and that you are creating that vision while holding the experience that you hope to deliver to your customers, to your partners, and to your employees. If we click down further, we talk about an AI-powered technology ecosystem, which essentially is the systems and tools that you will need to support the vision and the experiences that you just thought through as you were giving time and energy to the strategy and experiences above. One step further, we talk about an AI-evolved organization, which shines a light on the people, the processes, the policies. I would be remiss if I didn't focus or if I didn't at least give governance a shout out. We will talk about governance in a future episode of this webinar, but those things that really are required to activate AI technologies to their fullest, to their fullest possibility and potential. If we then go down and start clicking through our vertical considerations here, envisioning, simply put, it's understanding the opportunity and the challenge that AI represents to you, defining what success means, getting your stakeholders lined up, as we talked about a minute ago, and exploring the things that are needed to bring that vision to life. Our current state, which is really what we're going to focus on today, sees us diving deeply into understanding who does what, who needs what, the complexities and the considerations of the processes and tools that your workforce and your leadership currently use to perform their jobs, and understanding what must happen and what cannot happen in order for AI to be applied effectively in your organization. Finally, you got to bring it home with a good roadmap, which essentially brings your future state that is now known, your current state, which is now understood, and thinking through what it's going to take to close the distance between today and tomorrow. Collectively, we apply these things in what we call the activation framework, and that's part of how we at Lantern help our organization or help clients envision and apply AI in this rapidly emerging and evolving world. As I mentioned, today we're going to focus on the current state framework and understanding your AI readiness baseline, as well as the barriers to address and those things that are already present to dial up in thinking through this technology and what it means to your business. All right. So, second way to scale and implement AI is understanding what your barriers are and unlocking the enablers to scaling and realizing AI value. There's a lot going on in this slide. I will not drain it for those of you who saw this flash up and feared that I might. I'll invite you to take a little bit of a closer look as we share this deck with you following our time together today. At Lantern, what I guess the key takeaway here would be is what we want to do is guiding clients through understanding where they are in AI maturity today in what we believe are 8 important areas, or what we call AI capabilities. You see those capabilities on this slide. It is not an accident that we have capabilities around organization on one end and vision and value on the other end, and that those things bookend the technology. If you go back to that 70% statistic that Jeremy shared with you, it really puts a fine point on the fact that, yes, AI is inherently a critical technology, yet the application, adoption, and optimization of AI relies on the two things that sit on either side of it. We talk about AI experiences. These are things like human interaction, automating processes, agent-based systems. Value realization means that you're taking the time to define, measure, track, and report the value that is, or in some cases, is not being realized by AI. So you have a really clear handle on where you are winning, where you have opportunity for improvement, and where to refine your strategy and make ongoing investments. Other side of the spectrum here, adoption journey. Those are things like organizational culture, learning, change management, performance, and connecting those to AI, and then activating your organization with the fluency that we just talked about and the realization that there are new roles coming online. There are real implications of AI to existing roles and to your workforce. And then in the middle, you will see the cast of characters that I know you all would expect to see here, making sure that the right data is available, of high quality, understandable, and to Jeremy's point, there's some agreement around accuracy of data, things like safety and security, protecting that data, using it in fair and non-biased ways. AI engines are things like Copilot, low code, agents, and the models that we now increasingly associate with AI. And then last but not least, the cloud infrastructure, and making sure that you have the scale and the agility and the interoperability that you need there. All right, there was a lot going on there. So what comes as a result of exploring and being really clear about those capability areas? At Lantern, for the clients that we work with, ultimately what that means is going through a model-driven, data-based approach to really getting under the covers of those capabilities that are important to achieving scale with AI, and knowing how to navigate those challenges, preparing for risks, and setting yourself up for success from a competitive perspective, from a customer experience perspective, et cetera. So we assess and establish these baselines for our clients, looking at those 8 capabilities, using structured questions that cross all of those capability areas. We conduct stakeholder interviews. Sometimes our clients ask us to do constructive focus groups, and ultimately, from that work and those assessments and collecting that data and applying insights, both qualitative and quantitative, to what we learn when doing an AI capability baseline, we create an output in the form of a report that then serves as a direct input into strategic planning, into further identification and prioritization of technology and specifically AI projects and associated activities. All right, so I'm going to bring it home, and then I'm going to hand it back to Jeremy. So where from here? to clearly understand that level of preparedness or lack thereof that we've just talked about, we work with clients to set that baseline and understand the readiness in those 8 areas, as I just mentioned. This kind of AI readiness baseline typically takes 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the size and the complexity of the organization, as well as how much of this exploration and even work in some of the things on that prior slide where we had horizontal and vertical accesses. Any work that you've already done there contributes directly to understanding this baseline. As I mentioned, we take a structured approach, and through this effort, you walk away with a deeper understanding of capabilities, gaps, insights into barriers, momentum, or what is restricting momentum, and engaging with and getting buy-in, or at least starting to get buy-in with those stakeholders within your organization whose support is critical to the success of this technology.
All right. Thank you, Suzanne. So to lens back up for a second, at the end of the day, we're all trying to drive business outcomes in our organization. And as we talked about, it really comes down, the capabilities that are required to drive AI momentum really come down into 3 broad categories. First of all, this broad AI-informed strategy, the organizational change and fluency that needs to be built to deliver it, and then the technology that is underpinning and at the core of all of that. A lot of organizations will want to start at the technology, but as we talked about, the people and the organizational change and readiness are just as important for creating and sustaining AI momentum. So to recap, we talked a little bit about the current state of AI value realization. One of the opportunities for you is to reflect on some of the barriers in your own organization. What rings true for you? Several of you answered something else in the poll. Second thing we talked about was AI fluency in your organization to rise beyond just endless POCs. So we talked about this leadership AI fluency accelerator to be able to create a shared view, a shared language, and a shared perspective around value. And then lastly, we talked about AI readiness roadblock against this sort of larger comprehensive model of capabilities you need to be able to deliver AI success. And this readiness baseline, this is really now a readiness for scale. Now that we know maybe some of the places in the organization where we're challenged, some of the places in the organization we might not know, and the readiness assessment will help surface those, avoid some surprises. These are really, hopefully you're taking away from today some specific actions and ability to reflect on where you are in terms of your own organization. Now, we recognize that as we talked about, we're just starting to peel the onion here a little bit. So watch your invites and your inbox for upcoming events in the AI Momentum series. Next invite you'll get will be for June 24th, Unleashing Enterprise Data for AI. I'll be joined by my colleague, Jeff Johnston, and he'll really talk about what this AI revolution is surfacing, pros and cons, opportunities and challenges within our clients' data estates and their ability to leverage the data that they have and that they want to use for AI. And we'll also have several other upcoming episodes as we continue to work through the different capabilities in that pinwheel. So with that, what we want to do now is feel free to come off mute. Feel free to pop answers in your chat. We'd love to hear from you about questions about what we've talked about today. I am just looking back through the chat real quick here. Dan, I think you had a great point about security, compliance, and privacy regarding corporate data is a hesitation. I think another interesting spin that we're seeing on that one is there's a lot of documentation of what's called BYOAI, so bring your own AI, where AI is walking into your organization on personal mobile devices and other things like that. And it's even outside of maybe the scope of even what you're planning for in terms of AI capabilities. That's a great call out. So thank you for that. I'm just scrolling back in the chat. Other questions? Again, feel free to come off of mute.
Also, would certainly invite and welcome any experiences that anybody would like to share about what you have seen or haven't seen. It doesn't have to just be questions. We are as interested in learning from you all as we hope you might have taken a tidbit or two away from us today.
I saw, William, you made a comment about your particular industry, the risk tolerance. Your threshold is for tolerating risk is significant because you're in the background check industry. Yeah, probably getting it right there matters for a whole host of reasons. I think one of the things that we're seeing, I'd be curious what accuracy means in your organization. One of the things we're seeing is that there's this maybe fixation on percentages or interesting conversations about how do you define accuracy. So when you think about this in your organization, how is your organization thinking about accuracy?
That's an excellent question. It depends on, there's certain variables involved in this, but for the most part, it depends on that when someone says that we get an applicant and we do background check on them, we need to make sure that the stuff we report is not only them, but it's also, we don't get false positive, we don't get false negative. And that's where the risk tolerance is incredibly high in order to implement it in more broad spectrum throughout the organization. Right now, we're looking at smaller projects that don't involve actually fulfilling products at this time. And once we get our feet on the ground, understand the technology in a much more robust way, then that's when I think we'll be able to leverage much more in fulfilling our products to our customers.
No, makes a ton of sense for sure. And definitely something where we continue to see this idea of human in the loop. One of the things, I had a conversation that sort of, that record skip sound effect, like, I was having a conversation recently where I just asked, I said, hey, what is on the chatbot you've deployed, what is the traceability and discoverability on that? So if you get a legal hold request for your chatbot session, the same way you might get a legal hold for your email, what's your ability to do that? And there was a very big pause and there were some questions that were gone and asked because this is absolutely becoming an area where we're seeing the desire to really understand and be able to monitor and manage what customers are experiencing. Other questions? Thank you, William, for sharing. I will say in our poll, 5 of you said something else for barriers to adoption. I would love to hear what that something else on. Are there one of the 5 of you who's bold enough to come off of mute or pop in the chat about what you saw as a something else in terms of barriers of adoption?
We're seeing if anyone wants to chime in here. We'll give an example that we've seen with a couple of clients specific to Microsoft Copilot. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's the Microsoft product for ChatGPT and any other number of things. And it's a product that Microsoft is rapidly enhancing and issuing new features and functions for. But interestingly enough, whether it's just because it comes with an enterprise license or it seems like everybody's doing it, so we've got to get on it too, we are seeing clients just issue licenses for Copilot without giving thought to specific use cases for that. And while it may seem like a really simple example, yes, Copilot is cool, maybe, but I'm not really sure if I don't get an introduction to the product and I'm not educated on it. And if I don't have the opportunities to start practice some prompts, and even more importantly, if I don't think through specifically about how to use this technology in a way that's going to change the way that I work, those kinds of things, then IT, what we see is IT saying, we're spending all these money on these licenses, but nobody's using it, so we don't think that it's worth it. I guarantee you that when you find productivity use cases, for example, around something like Copilot, generating a no-brainer ROI in terms of hours saved on, for example, administrative tasks, with that can be redirected towards higher value work or more mission critical work. That ROI is absolutely there. But sometimes the barriers to adoption are as simple as, I got this thing and I don't know what to do with it. And that is a really easy barrier to solve through, or to solve for and to work through.
Suzanne, this one is right up your alley as the person who leads not only our strategy practice, but included in that is our change management practice. Jackson asks, how much of a skill is prompting, and how can a person or business improve their ability to prompt AI?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Jackson. Prompting is a bit of a combination of art and science today. There are courses that you could take, as well as we often incorporate into the work that we do with our clients, teaching how to use prompts. When we set up AI fluency workshops, we spend some time bringing real business problems that our clients are experiencing into those sessions and practicing prompts on them and using their own data sets. So we can do that. As I said, there are options out there to teach how to do prompts. I think about prompts like powerful questions. If you get the prompt just right, the return can be absolutely fantastic. And there is a little bit of use the right words in the right way and phrase it. And then sometimes you just have to be bold. And sometimes even when I'm prompting my AI assistant of choice, I actually specifically ask it to do things like be bold, be provocative. So there is this combination of art and science.
Suzanne, everybody wants to know, do you use please and thank yous when you're interacting with your co-pilots and AI agents?
You know what I do, and believe it or not, it does start showing up in the way that your assistant engages with you. They definitely take on your voice. Every once in a while, I get a thank you right back, which is fun. But the tone as well as the words absolutely make a difference. We got a couple of thumbs up for always the please and the thank yous. Yes.
Yeah.
And the converse is true, by the way, as well. Just hypothetically, I might have tested that also.
I don't know if we want to know what happens if we're rude to our co-pilots here. Excellent. I'm looking through. Any last questions? Feel free to hop them in the chat here. Again, we're just starting to unpack this. We'd love to hear your feedback on the series. By the way, the QR codes, one way you can connect with us is those QR codes will connect you to the LinkedIn for Suzanne and myself. We also have our email there. We'd love to hear from you in terms of what you thought of the series. You'll also be getting an email from us, and in that email will be a copy of the deck that you'll be able to use. Also, you'll be able to come back in that email, give us feedback, give us suggestions. Again, our next session up here on June 24th, look for an invite for that, is really getting after this data. No matter who you are in an organization, data is the lifeblood that makes or breaks AI. So this is probably one of the most important topics that we continue to see. And then, oh yeah, Stephen, I just saw you drop in here with so many AI tools coming to market. What's the best way to vet them and determine? One of the other upcoming session is we wrestle with this. I can buy AI, I can configure AI, or I can build it. What should I do for what sort of things? Really vetting this portfolio of different AI engines that you have in terms of making that swappable. Absolutely watch for that here in an upcoming session, because it's a top of mind for a lot of organizations. What's the right way to introduce an AI capability into my organization? That buy, configure, build, 100%. All right, with that, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you join us for the next episode of AI Momentum.